The biggest mistake of my life was not the affair that nearly destroyed everything I loved, but believing I could lie forever, without facing the consequences. And the day I walked back into my luxury home after 10 days away, I discovered that karma had been waiting for me with far more patience than I ever imagined. I had returned expecting a warm welcome, a forgiving smile, and another chance to continue living my double life. Yet instead I stepped into a silence so heavy that it felt as though every happy memory had been erased from the walls before I even unlocked the front door. My name is Ethan Hayes, and I had built a successful engineering company in Seattle that made people believe I was an honest family man who worked endless hours to provide the perfect life for my wife and our newborn daughter. While the truth was that I had secretly spent the past week relaxing in a luxurious mountain resort with another woman. During the drive home, I rehearsed one believable excuse after another about delayed meetings and unexpected client negotiations, convinced that expensive gifts and carefully chosen words would once again hide the reality that I had become a stranger to the promises I made. On my wedding day, I carried an elegant bouquet of pale peach lily as I climbed the front steps, imagining that my wife, Natalie, would be exhausted from caring for our baby, but still happy to see me, because she had always forgiven my long absences without asking difficult questions that threatened the comfortable illusion had created. Every detail of my return had been carefully planned in my mind, yet the moment I pushed open the front door, I realized that nothing inside the house matched the picture I had imagined, because the air felt cold, empty, and strangely unfamiliar. Our longtime house manager, Grace, quietly folded decorative blankets into moving boxes while soft afternoon sunlight filled the living room, and instead of greeting me with surprise, she simply looked up with calm eyes that revealed she had been expecting this moment for days without showing the slightest emotion. Before I could ask where my wife was, she gently informed me that Natalie had packed her belongings, taken our daughter, completed every legal document she needed, and moved into a new home more than 2 weeks earlier, leaving detailed instructions for the property before ending her employment with my family forever. At first I laughed because the situation sounded impossible, since Natalie had always appeared gentle, patient, and completely devoted to our marriage, making it difficult for me to imagine that she would disappear without a single emotional confrontation or dramatic argument while I was away. My confidence quickly collapsed when I rushed upstairs and discovered empty closets, spotless shelves, a nursery stripped of every toy and blanket, and not even the faint scent of the lavender perfume that had always reminded me that my wife and child were waiting for me, because for the first time in many years I understood that someone had quietly closed the door on my old life without asking for my permission. My hands shook as I searched every room, opening drawers, cabinets, and closets with growing desperation, hoping to find some note explaining why my family had vanished. But every space looked as though it had been professionally prepared for a new owner, with no trace of the life we had built together. The only things left behind belonged to me, and the realization that Natalie had intentionally removed every reminder of herself and our daughter made the silence inside the house feel more frightening than any argument we could have had. I immediately grabbed my phone and called Natalie over and over again, but every attempt ended the same way, with an automated message telling me that her number was unavailable, and the same thing happened when I called her parents, her closest friends, and even a neighbor who occasionally watched the baby. Panic slowly replaced my confidence because nobody answered, and for the first time I realized that this was not an emotional reaction from a hurt wife, but a carefully organized plan that had likely been prepared long before I came home. Frustrated beyond reason, I demanded answers from Grace, asking whether Natalie had left me a letter or at least one final message, expecting pages filled with anger, tears, and accusations that I could eventually explain away with another carefully crafted lie. Instead, Grace calmly reached into a folder resting on the dining table and handed me several neatly organized documents, quietly saying that Natalie believed I would understand everything after reading them because the truth no longer needed emotional words to speak for itself. I unfolded the papers expecting divorce forms, but what stared back at me was something far more terrifying, because every page contained a detailed record of my financial activity over the previous several months, including hotel reservations, expensive restaurant bills, luxury jewelry purchases, and private transfers that I believed nobody could ever connect to me. Every transaction included dates, locations, exact amounts, and thoughtful notes explaining how marital money had been spent to support another relationship while my wife remained at home recovering from childbirth, making each page feel less like paperwork and more like evidence prepared for a courtroom. My heart pounded as I turned to the final page, where a short typed statement explained that every listed expense had occurred while Natalie was caring for our newborn daughter alone, adding that the complete file had already been shared with legal professionals before I ever returned home, which instantly destroyed the illusion that I still had time to repair the damage. In that overwhelming moment, I finally remembered something I had foolishly ignored for years, because before leaving her successful career to support our family, Natalie had been one of the most respected forensic financial investigators in the state, and I suddenly realized that the woman I believed I could deceive had spent her entire professional life exposing people exactly like me. The more I studied those documents, the more I realized they had not been thrown together in anger, but assembled with the patience and precision of someone who knew exactly how every piece of evidence would be used when the time came. Each page connected another hidden decision I had made, proving that the life I believed was carefully protected by lies had actually been exposed long before I ever packed my suitcase for that resort vacation. Grace quietly broke the silence and told me that everything had changed only a day after I left town, when Natalie received an unexpected visitor who stayed for less than an hour before leaving without raising a single voice. According to Grace, my wife spent the rest of that afternoon sitting beside our sleeping daughter without shedding a tear, and when the sun finally set, she calmly contacted a moving company, hired one of the most respected family attorneys in the city, and began organizing every detail of her departure. A cold wave of fear swept through me, because I finally understood that Natalie had never intended to fight with me or beg me to come home, since she had chosen something far more dangerous by allowing the facts to speak louder than her emotions. I rushed into my private office, powered on my laptop, and attempted to access my personal banking accounts, believing I could at least secure my finances before whatever legal action she was planning reached the next stage. Instead of my account dashboard, a bright warning appeared across the screen informing me that several personal and investment accounts had been temporarily restricted under a court-authorized preservation order until the ongoing financial dispute could be reviewed. I refreshed the page again and again, hoping it was a technical problem, but every attempt produced the same message, leaving me frozen in my chair as I realized that the fortune I had spent years building had suddenly become completely unreachable. Desperate for answers, I immediately called my longtime attorney, Michael Bennett, and explained everything as quickly as I could, expecting him to reassure me that the situation would be resolved within hours. Yet the silence on the other end of the line lasted so long that my confidence completely disappeared. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a seriousness I had never heard before as he warned me that judges approved financial restrictions only when they believed strong evidence suggested someone might hide or misuse shared assets, and he advised me to prepare for a legal battle that could change every part of my future. As Michael carefully questioned me about recent financial decisions, my mind raced through every secret purchase and hidden transfer I had made during the past year, and I suddenly remembered wiring a massive bonus payment into my girlfriend's personal account after disguising it as a private investment that nobody would supposedly notice. My confidence disappeared because I finally understood that if Natalie had uncovered that transaction, she had likely uncovered everything else connected to it, leaving me with no believable explanation for the choices I had spent years hiding. Before I could continue speaking with my attorney, my phone vibrated with a message from an unfamiliar number, containing a single photograph that instantly stole the air from my lungs because it showed my tiny daughter lying inside a hospital intensive care unit surrounded by monitors, tubes, and worried medical staff. Beneath the picture was one calm sentence explaining that while I had been enjoying a luxury vacation, our daughter had been fighting a serious medical emergency that required immediate treatment, and another few hours of delay could have changed her life forever. A crushing weight of guilt settled over me as memories rushed back, because before leaving town Natalie had mentioned that our baby seemed unusually tired and her skin looked different. Yet I dismiss every concern by insisting that newborns often experienced harmless changes during their first weeks. Instead of listening to the woman who had been caring for our child every minute of every day, I chose convenience over responsibility, and the realization that my selfishness had almost cost my daughter her future was far more painful than losing money or property. Without thinking about anything else, I grabbed my car keys and hurried toward the front door, determined to find Natalie, see my daughter with my own eyes, and beg for one chance to explain the terrible decisions that had destroyed our family before it was too late. Just as I reached the entrance, Grace quietly stopped me and handed me a small sealed envelope, explaining that Natalie had asked her to deliver it only after I learned about the hospital because she believed I deserved to know the complete truth. Inside the envelope was a tiny flash drive with no label except my name written neatly across the front, and a terrible feeling settled in my chest as I inserted it into my laptop and discovered a single audio recording waiting to be played. The voices that filled the room belonged to Natalie and the woman I had secretly been seeing, and within seconds I realized that my carefully protected double life had already been exposed through a conversation I never knew had taken place. While Natalie quietly gathered every piece of evidence she needed without raising her voice or demanding a single explanation, the recording began with calm background noise from a quiet cafe, and then I heard the confident voice of the woman I had risked everything for, proudly describing our relationship as though it were some kind of victory, insisting that I would never leave her because excitement mattered more to me than loyalty. Natalie never interrupted or argued, and instead she allowed every arrogant word to be spoken naturally, knowing that honesty delivered by the wrong person could become the strongest evidence anyone could ever collect. When the recording ended, I finally understood why Natalie had never called me in anger or demanded an explanation, because she had already accepted that no apology could erase months of deception or repair the trust I had deliberately destroyed with my own choices. Rather than wasting her energy on emotional confrontations, she had protected our daughter, secured experienced legal representation, documented every financial detail, and quietly prepared a future where neither of them would ever have to depend on me again. I raced to the children's hospital with my heart pounding harder than it ever had before, ignoring traffic and replaying every terrible decision in my mind until I reached the intensive care unit and saw Natalie standing beside our daughter while speaking with a pediatric specialist. She looked physically exhausted from the difficult weeks she had endured, yet there was an unmistakable strength in her posture that I had never truly appreciated, and when our eyes met through the glass, she looked at me with complete indifference before calmly turning her attention back to our little girl. As I stood there overwhelmed with regret, my attorney called again to tell me that my business partner had reported serious financial irregularities after reviewing company records, forcing an internal investigation that threatened both my career and my reputation because the hidden transactions I believed were impossible to trace had finally been uncovered. In that painful moment, I realized that losing my wealth was not the greatest punishment I faced, since the true consequence of my selfish decisions was watching the woman who once trusted me completely choose a future where I no longer had a place beside her or our daughter. Months later, the court finalized our divorce. Natalie rebuilt her professional career with remarkable success. Our daughter recovered and continued growing into a happy and healthy little girl, and I was left with nothing except the painful lessons created by my own dishonesty, proving that trust is earned through consistent actions and can disappear forever after a single series of selfish choices. If my story reminds you that honesty, loyalty, and family should never be taken for granted, please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family.